obstacles between us. You guys have people that work out in the field? Yeah, most industries do. And when I bring up placing obstacles between you, they're like, there's no obstacle. There's nothing to put in between us. But if we can think about that now, there are different things that we can do. If I'm walking up and I'm approaching someone and I'll say, this is my person here, and we're talking, we're having a discussion, they're getting very angry. It's a very subtle, low-key message for me just to take a step back. And that's just creating a little bit more space. And even doing that puts you in a safer position. So we need to have strategies. We need to just know now that people get upset sometimes. It's happened. You've already seen it. You know how it kind of plays out most of the time. And as you have repeat customers, you kind of know their history, right? Sometimes people have a tendency to fly off the handle, sometimes for not a very good reason at all. But we can kind of plan that out. So when it's possible, we want to have two people with us. That doesn't always happen. I get that. But let's talk about how we can act with two people. If I'm up here and this is my partner over here, in the police world, we call this a tactical L. And it's really, I mean, you can look at it as an L or a triangle, but it's two of us standing here talking to one person. And in this position, one of us is the primary communicator. So probably me. I'm communicating. This person is just being a really good witness and making sure that I don't get hit. Now, sometimes I don't strike it off very well with this person and they don't like what I have to say. It may turn personal at some point. When it turns personal, the conversation is over because we're all professionals and we expect to be dealt with in a professional way. If things turn personal, that's when people start getting hurt. So once that happens, then I turn the conversation over to the other person. I can take a half step back and now I can be the good witness and watch out for him. If there's just no resolving it, and I wouldn't let it go more than a few minutes because you know which way it's trending. If there's no resolving the issue, then we're just going to stop that conversation. But now let's look at it from one person. For one person out there working with a difficult customer, then that leash is going to be a little bit tighter, right? Because we're not staying out there all that long to discuss a problem. Problems can be handled over the phone, through the email, come into the office where it's a controlled area, any of those things. But we don't want to put ourselves in a position of disadvantage and have an opportunity for somebody to get hurt. So we're going to do kind of the same thing, but taking a step off to the side really makes a difference in the whole mind's eye kind of how does this situation feel, right? Because if you and I are talking and we're having a conversation like this, and I just take a step off here, now I'm causing you to refocus on me, and that actually puts a small jump in your thought process. So there is a thing called an OODA loop. And an OODA loop is, every industry has their acronyms, right? So an OODA loop came from this Air Force colonel who wanted to figure out how to make his pilots think faster and think better. Well, he first had to figure out how they think so that he could speed up their process. And what he determined was this OODA. And that's observe, orient, decide, and then act. But if I chop that in any place, then we never get to the acting part. So if I make you continually re-observe things or reorient yourself to things, then we never get to the final spot. Now, it's a little weird to see somebody jumping around in front of you in order to make you not act, and then you might act in a really bad way. But we want to just really make sure that, again, safety is the first thing. Solving the problem really becomes secondary at that point. So know when to call 911. At what point do you guys think is reasonable if you're having an argument with somebody or they're presenting an argument to you? When does it become reasonable to call 911? When they're making verbal threats? Yeah. They put your hands on you? Yes.
Can't de-escalate.
When you can't de-escalate,
When it's
it just stays up here and it's not going anywhere. Despite your best efforts, there's nothing happening. Yeah. All of those things are the right times, right? You feel threatened, you are threatened, you're being battered. All of those times are times to separate. So how do we separate? How can we do that? If you're in an office setting, that's a lot easier to do than if you're in the field. So we'll start with the field part first. So if I'm in the field, I'm having an argument with somebody, or they're having an argument with me, then very simply, while I don't want to just simply turn my back to them and start walking away, I would start backing away. That's going to happen anyway, because subconsciously you don't want to be a part of this anymore. And so you're going to start creating some distance. But backing away 8 or 10 feet, telling them that you got to go back, you'll get something figured out, you'll be back in touch with them. Give them something, some future thing that you'll either reach out through the mail or phone or email or whatever the preferred way is. And then, but we'll get everything solved. It'll be okay. Then you can back away, get in your car and leave. If you're in the office, well, now we're depending on them to leave, right? A couple things that we found work pretty well. First, if we're in the office, then we've probably got other people in the office, even if they can't see or hear us from that point. They may be back in their spaces in different parts of the building. We want to make sure that somebody else knows that we're having a problem up here. So that's where each of you come in the best, right? You all know your buildings and your facilities better than anybody else. So we need to set up these processes where somebody can either hit a button on the phone or hit something else or press a walkie-talkie or do something. But other people in the building need to know that you're having issues and you need some assistance. And that could be as easy as them just coming up and showing themselves and being a reinforcement for you. Or they could be back in their office and calling 911 from there. Any number of things could be happening, but that's a plan that needs to be thought about and kind of drilled a little bit so that everybody's on the same page with that. If I'm going to set somebody down in a room in the office, then one of the things that we found works is to hand them a piece of paper, a clipboard, and a pen, and ask them to write down what the issue is so that you can make sure that it gets communicated properly to the people who can take care of it. You could play it off like you have no power in this. You're just the go-between person who's going to go figure out some kind of solution for them. And that's okay. Because it makes them, when you transition from saying or yelling your position to having to sit down and write it out, that kind of drains emotion out of it, right? Because now you've got to spell things out that you're trying to say. And we can take that, and now that you can work with. You can fix that. But just leave them in a room with their clipboard. Either they're going to write it down or they're going to get mad that you're not listening to them anymore and they're just going to leave. Either way, it's fine. You won that spot. So doing that is a great option. When we try to bargain or appease customers, a couple of things we want to stay away from. Should never make a promise because things happen. We should, if you've got a policy that allows a little bit of wiggle room, with something, maybe you can break up payments, or you can break up the service, or something like that. If those things can already happen and it takes no real effort, then tell them that those things are an option. But if they're not, don't invent new services or price scaling plans to try to solve that moment. Because what you're doing at that point is creating a new policy, because they will go back and tell their friends and say, this is what you got to do to get this. And we don't want to create that problem. So having that where we can redirect their thought process in whatever way it takes is really a great option. Knowing when to have somebody call 911 on our behalf is also important. Watching out for the safety of those people up front, pretty paramount. Weapons or threats of weapons. If somebody presents a weapon or even talks about a weapon, it's over. That contact has to be done right then, because right at that moment, your safety level has really dropped and your risk has risen to the point that you don't need to be there anymore. That's when, the police can get involved right away. They can be escorted off the property. They can be trespassed from the property. How many of you guys are familiar with the trespassing rules? So I obviously work here in Overland Park. As a representative of your business, you can trespass for almost any reason. You can ask somebody to leave for almost any reason. Just stay away from the protected classes. Okay, so you can't tell somebody to leave because they're in a wheelchair. But you can tell somebody to leave because you're wearing a blue shirt. And today we're not allowing blue shirts. You can tell somebody to leave because they have spoken about a weapon, and we have a strict no weapons policy here. So any of those things are enforceable. All you have to do is tell them, give them an opportunity to react to that warning, and then call the police. That's all it takes. It's not always the best way to keep customers, but you want to vet that out. If somebody's just coming in and threatening to shoot you, then maybe you don't want them to come back. So everybody needs to have a place to go, right? Really take some time. Does everybody have an active shooter plan in place for the facility? If you do not, or if it needs to be revamped, really give that some thought. Everybody deserves to be safe, and everybody should feel safe every day that they come to work. The worst thing that I hear, I give active shooter classes all the time. The worst thing that I hear from anybody is, I don't feel safe being here. Unfortunately, I hear that more from students, like high school students, who they go home and they hear about schools getting shot up, or their parents talk about the schools being shot up and all of those things. And, they're high schoolers. They don't know what to do with all of that information. So they no longer feel safe. But everybody should feel safe where they're at. So we want to make sure if you're not sure that you've got a great plan, or that you don't have a plan at all, and you're here in Overland Park, I can help you. I'll be the one. If you live in a different city, then you can either contact your police department, or you can contact some independent consultants. They're all over the place, and they'll be happy to come out and help you out. But everybody should have some kind of plan. Sometimes the behavior from a person who's gone off the handle originates because of a mental health issue. Those things are real. So we want to also be aware that if you don't know a lot about mental health, or what it looks like when a person is in crisis, then that would be a side piece of education for everybody to have. It's not important for anybody to understand when somebody is freaking out on you, to know exactly what is going on with them. What is important is that you recognize that their behavior in that moment, regardless of where it originates, is dangerous. And either you need to separate yourself from them to be safe, or you need to separate a space around them so that they can be safe in whatever they're doing. A lot of people sometimes, medical issues will appear to be nonsensical and dangerous to people. If you're diabetic and you start going into seizure, that's dangerous. If you have seizures and that's a condition, that can be not only dangerous to the person, but people around them. And through no fault of anybody's at that point. If they're struggling with a mental health issue, then you may have things like their words aren't matching their appearance or their actions. They may be yelling at you, but not physically doing anything. They may be trying to fight you, but when they speak, it's almost calm. It's like they're just standing in one place. So if those actions and words are not matching each other, you don't have to ask them, what's happening with you right now or anything like that. Don't put yourself in that kind of weird spot, but call the police. Most every city out here has a behavioral health unit. We do here in Overland Park. We've got a unit called OPCAT. If you haven't heard of it before, it's the Overland Park Crisis Action Team. And we send out officers with therapists to go work with that person who's having a crisis in that moment. We know that they don't belong in that moment at a commercial space, but the hope is also that we're not hospitalizing every person that we see. So we want to help them out, but we want to do it in the best way that we can. But make sure that you're safe in that moment, right? It's okay if somebody's having a crisis and they're just losing their minds. Make sure that they're in a space by themselves. Separate yourself, separate any other customers around them. If there were other customers, they may have left by that point. But we want to make sure that, again, everyone is safe. So we're going to call 911. We're going to remain as calm as we can be. Find a coworker to work with you. 2 minds are better than 1. Don't compete with them or try to convince them that you're right. So somebody comes in and wants to argue about pricing or scheduled pricing or the service that was rendered and it's not what they thought should have been done. Don't take that moment to tell them how wrong they are. We want to get through this, get to the other side. People, when they throw fits, and we see this too much on social media now with all the Karen videos, when we see people throwing fits, they're really just acting like children, right? So it's in that moment that you're not going to be able to reason with any of them. So don't try to challenge them. Don't try to diagnose them. It's not your job. It's not my job. We can redirect them and get them some qualified help. 3 rules for avoiding a hostile engagement. Don't take the bait. Don't take the bait. Don't get sucked into their emotions. They're getting all really amped up and mad. Don't mirror that and get mad right back at them. Know what triggers you. This is a big point. You have to know yourself enough to know what your trigger words are. Everybody's got a word, a phrase, something that will just pop them over the edge almost instantaneously. So know what that is, because people who get upset, if they turn their arguments personal, then they're going to start jabbing at you until they find the one button. Focus on solutions. Let's stay positive minded with all of this. Don't counterattack. Don't make a statement against their person. Okay, you can talk about the service and talk about calming down. Those things are fine, but we don't want to attack the person or the appearance. So there's never a thing wrong with that. A couple of really easy things to do when we're talking with somebody who's getting out of control and we see that, we're still hopeful that we can bring it back down. Hand movements and body movements, our own body language can help that. If you slow down the tenor of your voice, put a little bit of extra pause between your words, that makes people focus more on what you're saying. If I can get you to focus on the words that I'm saying, then your emotions are going to come down. We're going to drop your blood pressure, your heart rate will slow. Those are all good things. Hand movements, calming hand movements, like we're pushing down the emotion. Always be alert, right? Stand your ground, but we can bring it down. This is almost second nature to like kindergarten and first grade teachers. They don't even think about it. But many of the rest of us, we just forget. People have done this to us as we were growing up, but then we forget as adults. So just slowing it down, which can be hard when somebody's yelling at you. But slow down, use these kind of hand movements instead of this. We're going to slow down and take control. Communicate and understanding. Offer choices when they're possible. We're not going to make new choices. We're not going to make new allowances for one person. But offer something that's already available to everybody. And if sometimes you're not able to solve the problem, something's already happened, this is what you have to pay, that's just what it is. Sometimes it's just out of your control at that point. You can choose to give them a phone number or an email address and have them redirect themselves. Or you can take that on and say, I will send this up to somebody. Usually titles mean more than a person's name, so that they know that it's getting fixed. Some words and phrases to avoid. Don't use absolutes. Absolutely don't use an absolute. So always or never, just stay away from those. Don't suggest helplessness, just saying there's nothing I can do, it's completely out of my control. All that means to them is that they're going to bump over you and find the next person. Threatening undertone. If you don't calm down, I'll report you. Well, that's kind of ominous. I mean, who are you going to report to? Call the police. Challenging. Unfortunately, sometimes I hear this from cops. Go ahead and complain. I'm not worried about that. A lack of caring, whether or not you care, is immaterial. It's what you're communicating, right? So don't tell them, listen, I really don't care about your problem. It's almost lunchtime. I gotta go. Descriptions of their person, stay away from that. And their own hot phrases. Sometimes when people get really upset, I'm sure you've heard this before, people get really upset and then they repeat the same phrase 4, 5, sometimes 6 times because their brain is caught in that OODA loop. Don't take that phrase and throw it back out. And then awareness, overall awareness of what's going on around you. We have a tendency just as people that when we're engaged in an argument that's occupying our energy, then we get focused. We get tunnel vision just on that person. Don't forget that there's still a world around you. And we need to know, you need to know as people are coming up around you, either spatially or they're trying to, involve themselves in whatever situation is happening right there. All right, there is a book that we recommend. I don't know if you guys are readers. There's a book called The Gift of Fear. It's by Gavin de Becker. It's an amazing, quick read book, but it really reminds us to trust ourselves. So we've all got this instinct, and ladies, you are much better at it, at listening or interpreting it than the men are. When you get that feeling that this is not right, or I shouldn't be here right now, listen to that. Listen to yourself. Finally, look out for your own safety. We want to make sure someone knows where you are. So if you're out in the field, make sure that people back at the office know where you are and about how long you should be there. Can someone locate you? I do this with my family. It's not always appropriate with coworkers, but knowing where folks are at so that if they don't come back or they don't answer phone calls, that you can reach out to them and help them in whatever way might be good. Choose parking places, and wherever you put your car, choose it for safety rather than convenience. And look around. When you get out of your car, when you enter a new place, take a look around you so that you know that in a moment you could go out a side door somewhere and reach back out to safety. All right, so we've covered a little bit of stuff here. Do you guys have any questions? This was a safety-based class. Yes.
I don't have one, but concealed carry is a real thing now.
Yes.
I don't know if it's reciprocated in Kansas like it is in Missouri, but you may want to speak to, I've got friends that have, we'll go out and half of them are carrying, and they teach over and over and over, every way you don't pull your gun out, everything you do to de-escalate and not pull your gun out.
Yes.
What do you say about this? Because it's a real part of our lives.
Okay. Yes, it is. Concealed carry. Kansas is a constitutional carry state, which means that everybody can have a gun unless there's some sign or something that says I can't have it. So if you don't have these little signs from the state AG's office on the front of your business, you might consider it. It's that one with the black gun and the circle with the line through it. If by putting that on each of your entrances means very visibly that you can't carry your weapon through those doors, through that building. Now, if you were to learn that somebody has a weapon, you can see it through their shirt or their clothes, or they make reference to it, then you can tell them at that point, you need to go back to your car and place your weapon back in your car. If you don't, you'll be breaking that one AG rule, but also we're going to trespass you from this place. Those things are open up to you. Please don't think that you're going to de-escalate a situation by pulling a gun out. You will get de-escalated to jail, and we don't want to do that. It just ends up bad, especially if we get into a situation where then two people are just holding their guns out. And now neither of you knows what to do at that point. So guns very rarely solve a problem. So just, keep that in mind. Just knowing that just assume that people have a gun. And you want to be safe. Do you guys, what is your policy? Well, I should ask this. For your employees that are in the field, how many of you all have businesses policies that allow them to carry in their company vehicles, on company time, doing company projects? Anybody? Okay. Most places don't, but some haven't really addressed the issue. And so then it becomes implied that they can, right? So if the issue is ignored, then it's validated. So that's something that I mean, it's an obvious safety issue, and some people will raise that question. If I'm going out there and we're going to assume that everybody has a gun, then why should I not have one? Well, the goal isn't to get into a shootout when you're going out to your customers, but we also want you to be safe. So we're going to teach you these things. But that's really a conversation between your management, your CEOs, and your legal departments. So lots of questions there. Does anybody have a situation where they ran into somebody that needed to be de-escalated and it either worked or didn't work?
I used to be a elementary school principal, so I dealt with this like daily with crazy parents.
Yes.
And having to de-escalate them, and I had to trespass parents, and there were times where I was more successful than others. But I got really angry once and flew off the handle in the office and went off on the parent and they
Yeah.
left, but
That can be hard. It's much easier to deal with the kids than it is the parents.
absolutely. That's part of the reason why I don't do it anymore.
Yes, yes.
Is there ways for like a large business to like get more acquainted with the local police force without wasting their time and, you know, trying to just make sure they're aware of the facility and they have a system in place? I mean, you mentioned some of the local guys, but
Yes.
I didn't know if there's suggestions.
Yeah, so most of the departments in the metro have groups of people that by different names. I'm in a community policing group. Some departments call them community oriented folks. Some people call them community outreach. But these people, their whole job is to go out and meet you and have events in the community and do things like that. I will tell you, because I had gotten several invitations to come out and look at buildings so that we could be familiar with them. It's very nice. I appreciate it. But what I see in those buildings doesn't trickle out to everybody in the metro. And if you were to have some kind of incident, some kind of active shooter incident where you've got people coming in from all over the place, and here in Johnson County and this whole metro area, we have so many cities that are so close together and some overlapping jurisdictions that the first officers that you see may not be from your city anyway. So, especially in this building, right? Because how many borders do we have just right here within 2 miles? If you've got an incident like that that is dynamic, it's happening now, people's lives are in jeopardy, everybody is coming. We put it out on the radio and it goes to the entire metro area. People drop the calls that they're on to rush over here. I don't know how many of you remember, we had an incident at Olathe East. This was a couple of years ago now. A student shot a couple of, like, he shot the SRO, he shot an administrator at the school. That call came out from the SRO after he was shot. In about 6 minutes, they had to stop people from coming. So we've got too many officers here. We've got enough. Thank you for your response. We had over 100 officers there inside of 6 minutes. Now, while that's a lot of people to come within 6 minutes, we can also recognize that when you're fighting for your life, 6 minutes is a lifetime. So we want all of those officers to flood in. The point is, though, that they came from like 7 different jurisdictions. So when you invite us over, we appreciate it. We love to see the buildings and the facilities. We love to have the contacts, but we're not going to remember the floor plan, and it's probably not going to be transmitted over to the person who's coming first. Yes.
So in your discussion, you mentioned that women have better intuition than men. I don't think that's a newsflash, but I appreciate that. But are there other tactics that women should or should not use that are different than, say, men?
Yes. And there's 2 sides to this, right? So I'm going to kind of walk a fence here, and I don't want to offend anybody, all right? But I'm going to say this, that women are usually smarter. But sometimes women rely on that rather than trusting their gut and listening to their instinct. Okay. So what I mean by that is men generally don't feel like they're in physical danger unless a real problem presents itself. Women tend to take more time and evaluate changing situations and see how things are rolling in, right? Lots have been said about the difference in the way people think. And we all know that everybody comes from different backgrounds. If you talk to my kids, they were raised much differently than some others because I was teaching them all about pressure points and how to fight your way out of a situation from a very early age. Uh, and that's different from other people, and that's okay. But as we all look at our situations differently, you all know yourselves. Don't get offensive with yourself. If you have to trend one way or the other, I want you to trend to be defensive and avoiding. It's never wrong to avoid a confrontation, a physical confrontation, right? Sometimes we have to be involved in an argument. Sometimes it just has to happen in order to met out ideas. But we want to keep those encounters civil. If you feel like there's some kind of danger, then don't be there. Go somewhere else. There was a kind of a rumor, urban myth, urban legend that said sometimes people will hide underneath your car so that when you walk up, they're going to slit your Achilles tendon, right? And then they can overtake you at that point. That was a myth. Nobody's done that. But that's brutal enough sounding. We also hear the things about if you see like a ribbon on your door handle or, you know, some kind of marker being placed on your car. If you see that as you're walking up, you should just keep on walking and go back into the store because somebody's watching your car so that they can victimize you in some way. There are enough bad people in the world that has probably happened to somebody. But the lesson there is to listen to yourself. And so men need to watch out for that too, right? And not to overreact is usually the tendency that men have. Yes.
More, so you talked earlier in the conversation about the active shooter training.
Yes.
So I can, like Lindsay and I are from Topeka, they do that for a company at no charge. Do you guys do that?
Yes.
So anybody could just is that with you or
No.
how do they do that?
I can only be in Overland Park. But for anybody in Overland Park, free of charge, we'll set a date. I'll come out and do it with you. And we offer different levels of things because sometimes people haven't really thought about it that much. So we've got a presentation that we give. We can do a tabletop exercise that works very well with some groups of people. I've gone through office buildings so that we can stand in the space that they work and kind of drill it from there, right? You're at your desk. What are you gonna do from here? And sometimes, you know, the way some office buildings are set up where there's like no walls and you can see clearly from one side to the other, it's good to have that plan or just to think of that. So yeah, we offer all of that free of charge in Overland Park. If other places want to come to Overland Park, then I'm happy to do it that way. Otherwise, I would contact your local departments or an independent contractor. Yeah.
We just had an instance last week or before where employee left the building, got in their car, was driving home, and a car from an adjacent parking lot pulled out and then was aggressively driving and yelling at them.
Oh.
I didn't get, as an employee, I didn't get all the details of it, but, you know, my first thought was either go to a quick trip or go to a police station, or what would you do in that case?
Has everybody been involved in a road rage incident? Not asking if you're the rager. You can kind of tell if somebody has picked you as a target or if they're just having a bad day and trying to get around, right? We see these guys that are just kind of whipping through traffic. For those, we just let them go by. We don't need to be a part of their drama. Sometimes, though, they feel like you have cut them off in traffic or you did something 3 days ago and they've been watching your car and now they're just in a position to get right behind you. If you feel like that, like you have become a target individually, couple things you can do. If you're on a main road, turn off onto a side road. Better to get into a parking lot. Or if you know where your nearest police station is, you can just drive there. These guys, for some reason, never drive into the police parking lot. They honk and cuss at you and keep going. So yeah, different options there, but road ragers are pretty bad.
It was work-based.
Yeah. Oh, it
It was against our company. So
okay. All right. Yeah. And that's tough.
I don't know if they knew that individual and were mad at that individual, but they were screaming. I worked for FEMA, so they were screaming about FEMA.
And FEMA as a government organization brings up a little extra
Yes.
complexity. So
Yes.
I think IRS could have been coming after their taxes and they just saw them as a government person and
Could have been. So,
yeah, crazy.
We're
crazy.
told not to wear our badges outside the office, not to wear our company, our FEMA wardrobe, shirts, unless we're going to official activities, even in the office. If you're stopping at the grocery store on the way home, put a jacket or vest over it.
Yeah.
We've been told that from the beginning. We have physical active shooter drills, and then we also have to take a class once a year. We have all these online classes we have to take. So anyway,
Lots of training.
lots of training
Yes.
on all
Yes.
scenarios.
How many of you have had a risk assessment for your company and your work environments? For those who have, great, but most of us have not. And that really is an important thing. So it's just really thinking about what are all the things that can go wrong while I'm going to my appointment? What can happen while I'm on the appointment? If my company is, drills into the ground to fix plumbing lines or gas lines or whatever, well, there is inherent danger with that. But we don't often think about, am I in danger of a car running off the road and hitting me while I'm not paying attention to that? Or am I in danger of a homeowner running out here because I've dug this 8-foot hole in the middle of their front yard? We don't often think about those things, but those are all risks and hazards that we face. So each section of people should be looking at really closely what they do and all of the risks that can happen. Because once you've done that, once you've identified those risks, then you can start to mitigate that and figure out how we're gonna counter all of those things. All right. Well, thank you all. I really appreciate being invited over to talk to you. You guys are a great group of people. And if you have any questions, I will leave some business cards right over here, or I'll just leave them right here. If you're here in Overland Park and I can do anything for you, please let me know. Get in touch. I've got something like 35 classes already canned and ready to go. But if you have a topic of concern that I don't have a class for, I'll either make one or I'll find an expert who can talk about that. All right. All right, thank you.
You get the Monday morning memo.
Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, and so you have to probably look at like, is this all they do? And or is it too tall? So can might have taken place of irrigation. Yeah, and just don't want to get too tall. If it can, it would be really nice if the tripod was like this tall.
Thanks for coming.
Hoping to. Like that, so just, you just have to see how it goes. And then. It's the microphone, every speaker. You can, speaker comes out of here. And so I usually do that, so I do read this. So, we don't have stuff. So this is designed for.